I was going to skip this, not for any dramatic reason, just one of those quiet decisions where you think, well, this can wait, and then somehow it doesn't. So instead of doing something sensible, we are here. You are watching this, I'm talking, and together we have committed to the next several minutes of whatever this becomes. Welcome back to yet another episode of the Super Chalk Super Audio Show, where we talk about some super cool stuff and some super cool things, and occasionally question our life choices in the process. Today we have something rather interesting that is currently being featured on Kickstarter, the KiwiEars Halcyon. I have an early review sample, but KiwiEars did not get to see this review and will only have access to it the same time as you guys. So whatever happens here, good or bad, we are all finding out together. KiwiEars has opted to use Kickstarter, which basically means you get in early with a discount. The Halcyon originally retails for $259, but there is a super early bird backer price of $199. Of course, this comes in limited quantities because nothing motivates us quite like the fear of missing out on something you weren't really thinking about 5 minutes ago. Unboxing. So this is a very typical KiwiEars experience. You have the render of the Halcyon right smack in the center. Not the most creative presentation, but very consistent with how most of their other products are presented. At some point, consistency becomes its own kind of identity. They are also incredibly excited to tell you the driver configuration: one dynamic driver, 3 balance armatures, and 1 MEMS driver. It's printed on the front and then they repeat it on the side, so it must be something important. Inside, there's really no surprises. You have the earphones themselves. We'll talk about the build quality in a bit. Beneath that, you get the earphone case. It's a very typical case. You've probably seen it before. It is one of those cases that doesn't try to impress you, but also refuses to disappoint you. It sort of just exists doing what it needs to do. It's also oddly durable in a very specific way, like you could bring it to play golf and just start hitting it around and it would probably survive longer than your expectation. I'm not gonna do that. Hit it around with a golf club.
You're not itching up.
So yeah, it's pretty good for golf. Let's play golf. Oops. I'm going for a birdie. Obviously I got no idea what am I doing. The hole's there. Okay, let's try. Shit. One more time. Yay.
Inside the case, you get a 2-pin cable along with a 3.5mm and 4.4 adapter jack to go along with it. One thing to note is that the cable and the 3.5mm 4.4 jacks are non-locking, so they are friction fit. It works, it holds, until over time it might not. So if you swap them frequently, there's a good chance it will loosen and start slipping out occasionally. That's what she said. Not enough to ruin the experience, but just enough to remind you that it's there. You also get some ear tips. They exist, they are functional, and like most included ear tips, they probably be replaced the moment you decide to care a little bit more. Build. The Halcyon is made from aluminum and it certainly feels quite sturdy in hand, possibly the best from KiwiEars so far. There is a reassuring sense of solidity here, not overbuilt, not unnecessarily heavy, just well constructed. It is finished on a nice warm grey chassis that feels restrained. It doesn't try too hard to stand out, which somehow makes it more noticeable. On the side that touches your ear, it is leveled in a 2-tier design, and this actually makes a difference. It allows for a really comfortable fit, something you appreciate more the longer you use it. The faceplate features a logo pattern across it, which is quite interesting. It catches light just enough to give it texture without being overly distracting. And usually manufacturers go with a cap for the faceplate design. The one here has a larger rim profile along the edge, so the faceplate is more like a lid that sits into the chassis instead. This is a subtle change, but it makes the entire design feel less bulky and more refined. Inside the chassis, there is an internal chamber that controls airflow and minimizes standing waves, and paired with that you have one dynamic driver, 3 balance armatures and 1 MEMS driver. Now the key feature here is the MEMS driver. It is still quite rare, and typically it requires a DC bias, meaning you probably need a dedicated external energizer, which is where things usually becomes inconvenient. But here's the thing, this one doesn't. So you don't really have to carry an energizer around just to use it. No additional setup, no extra burden, it just works as it should. As for the cable, I'm not entirely sure what material it's made of, but it's pretty decent. The only issue is the connectors. The 3.5mm and 4.4mm adapter is non-locking, it's basically friction fit, so over time, especially if you like to swap them often, it will loosen and slip out occasionally. Not dramatic, just a bit inconvenient. Sound. The Halcyon adopts a very versatile sound signature, one that suits a wide range of genres. Pop, classical, R&B, jazz, rock, it generally sounds pleasant across the board. It features a modern V-shaped tuning with a quick dip in the mid-bass to ensure a clean, high-resolution listen. The Halcyon treads a fine line between musical and technically proficient. For context, this review was conducted with the Lotu Monia, which is frankly overkill, like using a missile on a pigeon. Completely unnecessary, but if you have it, you want to use it because it's quite nice to see the pigeon just go sploot. That's a bit dark. Bass. Bass on the Halcyon is rendered with good taste. It doesn't lean excessively technical, which might yield more detail but often sounds dry. Instead, it balances technicality with musicality. The bass is impactful and punchy. It isn't lightning fast, but it's quick enough to avoid sounding sluggish while still allowing notes to carry a bit more natural resonance. Dynamics here are also excellent. The Halcyon leans slightly more towards sub-bass than mid-bass. Sub-bass delivers a satisfying punch with ample rumble, giving notes realistic weight. Mid-bass is still well weighted. It complements the sub-bass nicely without bleeding into the lower mids, so you get both impact and control. Mid-range. The mid-range leans slightly warm but not excessively slow. Vocals are rendered with a balance of technicality and character, supported by a well-controlled bass response that keeps the mids clean. Female vocals sound very clean yet organic, delivered with good energy. Male vocals carry realistic weight. They come across full yet crisp and high resolution. Instrument separation is strong even in complex mixes. Individual elements are easy to pick out. Keyboard runs in particular remain audible in dense passages, something lesser sets tend to struggle with. Treble. Most people will be curious about the treble, especially since this is where the MEMS driver comes into play. The sense of air on the Halcyon is excellent, effortless and smooth. Cymbals avoid harsh sizzle yet remain refined enough to preserve details. There's no unnatural sharpness here, just a clean, extended presentation. And that effortlessness contributes to a strong sense of space and depth. Soundstage. For an IEM, the Halcyon performs very well in soundstage. Think of a Broadway theatre. Something on the larger side like the Eugene O'Neill Theatre, which I was there. The seats are buggy, to say the least. But anyways, there's good width and height supported by strong dynamics. Imaging and positioning are also well executed. Sounds are placed accurately and transitions feel natural. Nothing feels vague or artificially stretched. It's not trying to be the biggest, it's trying to be coherent, and it succeeds at that. Comparison. So one comparable IEM with a MEMS driver is the Binary Acoustics EP321. The EP321s include an additional passive radiator, while the rest of the configuration is broadly similar. EP321 sounds slightly more technical in comparison, whereas the Halcyon leans more romantic. Treble extension is strong on both, but vocals on the Halcyon comes across as a touch sweeter. Build-wise, the Halcyon feels more robust and able to take a beating, while the EP321 offers a transparent design that lets you see the internals. The trade blows quite evenly. Your preference will really depend on your priorities. And finally, ratings. I had a genuinely enjoyable time listening to the Halcyon. It is a crowd pleaser with straw genre versatility. There are a couple of minor drawbacks. The 3.5 4.4 connectors are non-locking and rely on friction fit, so frequent swapping may loosen them over time. The included case is also fairly generic aside from the KiwiEars logo. But on the positive side, it's great for golf or just hitting it around. But honestly, these are small complaints. All in all, the Halcyon earns a strong A, not because it tries to reinvent anything, but because it understands what it is doing and executes it well. And honestly, that's enough. If you enjoyed the Superchunk Super Audio Show, a like would be great and a subscribe would be spectacular. And if not, I guess that's fine too. Well, once again, thanks for watching. Bye.